morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody. The last time that we met, we talked about ventilators and how we. Can you all hear me? Can you all see me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, all right. So the last time we met, we talked about modes of mechanical ventilation and how to operate the ventilator. We will go back to that once more later on when time permits. But now let us talk about something very, very, very important in critical care, and it is called as ventilator-associated pneumonia. Remember one thing, in medicine, the most important dictum that I've learned over a period of years is that to do minimum. Anything that we do more than minimum is known to upset the usual course of events. So that means to say, if we intervene, there is a high chance of problems to come in. Nothing has proved to improve mortality. Nothing and nothing. All that we do is associated with side effects. There is nothing that does not have side effects, including, as you know, fluid. Even water has got its own side effects. So putting in a ventilator, that is such a drastic thing to put in a ventilator, is fraught with a large number of side effects. A large number of side effects are fraught with just by putting the patient on a ventilator. All right. Hello. Hello. Can you all hear
Yes,
me?
sir.
Yeah. All right. So because your videos have suddenly just stopped. I don't know why your videos have just stopped. Can you hear me, Ruchika?
Sir, आपका वीडियो Sir, your video
Niharika?
has frozen and your voice is quivering.
Oh, so let me just change the internet. Maybe this is the internet issue. Give me a minute. Okay. Mhm. All right. So can you all hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. So, so when we talk about ventilator-associated pneumonia, this is something that is very, very important for us to understand. What is the meaning of ventilator-associated pneumonia? So when we say ventilator-associated pneumonia, it just means that because of putting an endotracheal tube, because of putting the patient on a mechanical ventilator, there is a formation of an infection. So this, when you say ventilator associated pneumonia, the commonest cause of ventilator associated pneumonia is a endotracheal tube. So you can also call it as endotracheal tube associated pneumonia. So when you say ventilator associated pneumonia, it is only for those patients who have been put on an invasive mechanical ventilator. It is not for patients who have been put on non-invasive ventilator. So only when you have invasive mechanical ventilation, this is called as ventilator associated pneumonia. How do you pick up a patient of ventilator associated pneumonia? So if the patient develops now there if you look at the definitions, there are two different definitions you must understand. One definition is the surveillance definition. That means what is used for infection control, and one is the clinical definition. So there are two different definitions, the surveillance definition and the clinical definition. Both are completely different. I mean, they are interrelated, but they are different. Now, when you say surveillance means we are trying to pick up a problem. So the infection control nurses who do surveillance for ventilator associated pneumonia will now make it a continuum of care. For example, it starts with ventilator associated condition, goes on to infection related ventilator associated condition, probable ventilator associated pneumonia, and possible ventilator associated pneumonia. So they divide VAP into four categories. Which are the four categories? Ventilator associated condition. The nurses categorize them as ventilator associated condition, followed by infection related ventilator associated condition, also called as IVAC. This is then followed by probable ventilator associated pneumonia, and the fourth is possible ventilator associated pneumonia. So this is called as a surveillance definition. This is called as the surveillance definition. So again, I'll repeat those 4 words. Are all the nurses listening? Priya, you're listening this, right?
Yes,
Priya?
sir.
Yeah,
Yes,
Priya,
sir,
this
I'm here.
question was asked in the exams, but none of them were able to answer this properly. So there are 4 very important definitions that you must remember. It's important for all of us to understand these definitions. The first is called as ventilator associated condition. So anything, first of all, you must understand when I talk about VAP, it means 48 to 72 hours after intubation. So if the patient was intubated on 16th on 2 o'clock, it means 18th 2 o'clock onwards, any problem that occurs, it will be categorized as ventilator associated condition. Clear on this? Am I clear on this in the first place? So it has to be 48 hours later after intubation. 48 hours after intubation, when the patient develops a condition, it is called as ventilator associated condition. Now, what is the meaning of VAC, ventilator associated condition? It means that your FiO2 has gone more than 0.2. That means it has gone from 40 to 60 or 20 to 40 or 40 to 60 or 50 to 70 plus, or the PEEP has gone up by 3 or the PEEP has gone up by 3 for 2 days. So if the PEEP has gone up by 3, that means your PEEP was 4 has gone to 7, FiO2 was 40 has gone to 60. If something like this has occurred for a period of 2 days, this is called as ventilator associated condition. Clear on this? This is called as ventilator. Now we are talking about only surveillance definitions. In the surveillance definitions, ventilator associated condition means that your FiO2 has gone up by 0.2, that is 20 to 40, 40 to 60, 60 to 80, plus there is the presence of and or there is a presence of PEEP going up by 3. That means the PEEP was 4, it has gone to say 7, or the PEEP was 6, has gone up to 9. When something like this occurs on the ventilator, the nurses should pick it up as ventilator associated condition. So in the surveillance, the nurses will say this patient is now developing a ventilator associated condition. This is not yet infection. It is not yet VAP. This is ventilator associated condition. All right. Now the next step is if the patient develops a fever of more than 38 degrees or equal to 100.4 degrees Fahrenheit, plus there is, or maybe there is purulent secretions. Okay. Or there is a change in the character of the secretions. Okay. This is called as infection related ventilator associated condition. Clear? This is called as infection related ventilator associated condition. Right? If there is fever or there is leukocytosis, this is infection related ventilator associated condition. Now, if the patient now develops a patch or radiography and there is some organism glowing here and there, this is called as probable ventilator associated condition. And once you start growing the organism in significant colony forming units, it is called as possible ventilator associated pneumonia. Am I clear on this now? Has everybody understood this? Any queries here? Huh? Any queries here?
So what was the possible VAP?
So 1 minute. Yeah. So when we are talking about VAP, we have again four criteria. Ventilator associated condition. Okay, these are all events. Okay. The second is infection related ventilator associated condition. The third is probable VAP, and the fourth is possible VAP. Okay. Now infection. When you say infection related ventilator associated condition, it means that there is some temperature, there is some WBC count that has gone up, there is any of these two things that comes in. Once you start an antibiotic, okay, once you start an antibiotic and it seems that we are having increased secretions that is coming from the chest, it is called as probable. Okay, and possible is when you are growing the organism in 10 raised to 5 colony forming units. Clear on this now? Shall I repeat this once more? So if you have started so for example, let me take this example. You have a patient who was on the ventilator. Now it is today. Day after tomorrow, what happened was you increase the PEEP. Since you increase the PEEP, or you increase the FiO2, this is called as ventilator associated condition. Now the same day the patient develops fever and a WBC infection related ventilator associated condition. Now some doctor comes and starts an antimicrobial. This is called as probable ventilator associated infection related ventilator associated condition. Now you have sent the ET secretions for culture and it has grown an organism. This is called as possible VAP. Clear on this? Clear on this? But this is a surveillance definition. What is this called as? Surveillance definition. For practical reasons, we don't use surveillance definitions. In clinical care, we use clinical reasons to call it as a ventilator associated pneumonia. So clinically, what is called as ventilator associated pneumonia is the presence of a persistent or progressive or new persistent or progressive patch in the lung, plus the presence of a ET secretion that is growing more than 10⁵ colony forming units of organism, plus fever, leukocytosis and signs of inflammation, purulent secretions is called as ventilator associated pneumonia. This is the definition of ventilator associated pneumonia. Am I clear? So I'll just repeat that once more. A, you need imaging findings. The imaging findings are progressive or persistent progressive pulmonary infiltrate. You need an X-ray that says this. Second, you require microbiology that is greater than 10⁵ colony forming units when you're doing ET secretions for aspiration. Okay, and third is symptomatology, where you should have fever, a WBC count that has gone more than 12,000 or less than 4,000, the signs of inflammatory responses, and purulent secretions. So these go in favor of ventilator associated pneumonia. It's a clinical definition. It is a clinical definition. So understood now. So there are two definitions of VAP. One is the surveillance definition and the other is the clinical definition. The clinical definition will involve microbiology, X-ray and symptoms, whereas the surveillance definition goes through a continuum which includes ventilator associated condition, infection related ventilator associated condition, probable VAP and possible VAP and probable VAP. Probable VAP and possible VAP. Clear on this? So this is the difference between surveillance definitions and clinical definitions. Now, the most important thing of today's topic is what are the nursing recommendations to prevent ventilator associated pneumonia. So how do you prevent ventilator associated pneumonia is what we are going to discuss today. Okay, now that we know what VAP is, again VAP is 48 to 72 hours after the endotracheal tube goes inside. That is the definition of VAP. Okay, and after that, how do you prevent this? How do you prevent ventilator associated pneumonia? So there are a few things that you must know. As doctors and nurses, there are few things that you must know. There is something called as ventilator bundle. Okay, there is something called as ventilator bundle and there is something called as VAP prevention strategies. Please do not mix both of them. The ventilator bundle and VAP prevention strategies are two different things. The ventilator bundle is some 4 things that you have to do in every patient. Okay, the VAP bundle, the ventilator bundle is 4 interventions, very simple interventions that every ventilated patient should undergo. That is called as the ventilator bundle. Now this bundle, what is the meaning of bundle? When you do many things together, everything becomes good. That is the meaning of bundle. You do small things together and do it together. When you have many small things and you do it together, there is an improvement. That is the meaning of bundle. And bundling has been a concept that has been there since the last 20 odd years. Since the last 20 odd years, we are having bundles of care. VAP bundle, CLAPSI bundle, ventilator bundle. Then the skin and soft tissue infection bed sore bundles. So many bundles that are there which are actually helping us to improve our care. So in that one of the important bundles that we have is called as ventilator bundle. Don't confuse ventilator bundle with VAP care prevention bundle. Okay, now what is the ventilator bundle? The Institute of Health Improvement from the United States introduced a bundle called as ventilator bundle. Now, what is a ventilator bundle? The ventilator bundle had four important things. What are the, when somebody asks you what is the ventilator bundle, four things should come from your mouth. The first thing is semi-recumbent positioning. The first thing is semi-recumbent positioning. Okay, the first thing is semi-recumbent positioning. The second thing is chlorhexidine mouthwashes. Okay, the sorry. Second thing is sedation vacation. Sedation vacation. The third thing is DVT prophylaxis. And the fourth is peptic ulcer prophylaxis. So four things should come out from your mouth the moment somebody talks about ventilator and bundle. Okay, so shall I repeat those four things? Those four things that we're talking about are A, semi-recumbent positioning, B, sedation vacation, C is peptic ulcer prophylaxis, and 4 is DVT prophylaxis. There are four things that come as a part of the ventilator bundle. Now let's go to each of these parts. These things are an element that you have to do in every patient who is mechanically ventilated. Now, what is the meaning of semi-recumbent positioning? So to understand why to do semi-recumbent positioning, you must understand how VAP develops. Now, how does VAP develop? See, the moment we put the patient into the hospital or the moment we take the patient into the ICU, we are giving them antibiotics. The moment we give them antibiotics, the oral flora and the gastric flora completely changes. Today, if I take for no reason an antibiotic, my oral flora and my GI gastric flora will completely change. Now, there are possible development of pathogenic organisms inside my GI tract. This oral flora, this pathogenic organism will now come from the top through the mouth and get into my lungs. That is how you normally have it. Normally, ventilator associated pneumonia occurs because of a oropharyngeal aspirate that gets into the lungs. A oropharyngeal aspirate that gets into the lungs. Okay, that is the genesis of having a ventilator associated pneumonia. That means every patient who comes to the hospital, every patient that comes to the hospital and gets an antibiotic will have a change of flora in the mouth as well as in the gastrointestinal tract. So this, if gets aspirated into the lungs, it will cause ventilator associated pneumonia. Now, why is this VAP more? ऐसा रहेगा तो every patient should get it. But those patients who have an endotracheal tube have got a higher chance of getting ventilator associated pneumonia because of many reasons. What are the reasons? A, once you put a tube inside, there is going to be some loss of defense mechanisms. For example, now you and me are coughing. You and me are coughing so violently that anything that goes inside, we will cough it and take it outside. That is what we do. So that means a small drop of water also, if it gets into my body, I will be able to take it out of my body because I will cough efficiently. What is happening when you're putting an endotracheal tube? They cannot cough. They cannot cough. So since they cannot cough, nothing is coming out. Nothing is coming out. So you have taken off one defense mechanism. One defense mechanism is cough. Other thing, what also you have done is you have given them deep sedation. So even if they have to develop a violent cough, they can't develop it because of the sedation that we give, the paralytic agent that we give, they cannot still cough. So that cough is completely gone. Okay. The second thing that we do in these cases is what? Is we have put in a tube. Normally what happens is if there is a lot of secretions down below my trachea, I have something called a cilia in my tracheal tree. This cilia beats upwards. It beats upwards and takes the secretion upwards. So as the secretion goes upwards, it gets out of the respiratory tract. Now this is called as mucociliary clearance. Now what has happened because of the endotracheal tube? This mucociliary clearance is no longer working. Okay, so the second defense mechanism, which is the mucociliary clearance, that has also gone. Okay, clear on this? Now what has also happened? What has also happened is when you have put a tube in place, there is going to be a development of, or see now what is going to happen to the bacteria? The moment it finds a tube, the bacteria will go and sit on the tube. Okay, so that is why it forms something called as a biofilm. It forms a biofilm on these endotracheal tubes, which is inside as well as outside. And it is these biofilms that will actually go inside and basically develop an aspiration pneumonia. That is how ventilator associated pneumonia comes from that side. Now, moreover, one of the most important things is that when you are putting an endotracheal tube, you are putting a cuff. So there are secretions that are coming that are going to stand above the cuff. There are secretions that are going to be above the cuff. Now you are not continuously taking out those secretions, and these secretions slowly will from the sides of the cuff will go inside the lungs and cause ventilator associated pneumonia. Clear? That is the reason to prevent many of these things. If you give the patient a semi-recumbent position, by definition is 30 to 45 degrees. This is a definition of semi-recumbent position, 30 to 45 degrees. The chances of aspiration will actually reduce. But what you must understand here is that 30 to 45 degrees is very difficult to achieve in the ICU. If you say 30 to 45 degrees, Kanchan, if you look at your ICU patients now besides you, you will not find them at 30 to 45 degrees. They are not at 30 to 45 degrees because it is impossible to sit at 30 to 45 degrees, because as you sit, your entire pressure will go on your sacral area. If you are at 30 to 45 degrees, your entire pressure will go on the sacral area. And needless to say, these patients start slipping down from the bed. They start slipping down from the bed if you try to keep them at 30 to 45 degrees. That is the reason that though they have recommended a 30 to 45 degrees, to achieve a 30 to 45 degrees, it is very difficult. Even in the studies in which they looked at 30 to 45 degrees, they were not able to achieve 30 to 45 degrees. Almost 75% of the times they were not at 30 to 45 degrees, and hence 10 to 20 degree is enough. So a semi-recumbent position of 10 to 20 degrees will prevent an aspiration. Definitely you should not have the patient in supine position. Definitely you should not have the patient in supine position. Am I clear on this? So no patient on ventilator should be in the supine position. It is a crime to do that, because if you do that, now that you know that everything is occurring because of aspiration, more aspiration will occur, especially because you're feeding feeding your patients, more aspiration will occur, and these patients will have ventilator associated pneumonia. Aspiration does not mean that forceful aspiration. It just means that some amount of secretions is coming up and going inside. Some amount of secretion coming up and going inside. It doesn't mean that forceful removal of secretions. Slowly amount of secretions, micro aspirations will keep on occurring, the incidence of which is very high when you are in the supine position. Am I clear on this? That is why a mechanical ventilated patient has to be in semi-recumbent position. 1 minute. Hello? Yes. This is regarding what? So please call me in an hour, please. I'm in the middle of something. Call me in an hour. I will talk to you. Okay. Yeah. Bye. Okay. So we talked about the first part of the bundle. The first part of the bundle was what? Semi-recumbent positioning. Have you all understood what is the importance of semi-recumbent positioning? Okay, now what is the second part of the ventilator bundle? The second part of the ventilator bundle is sedation vacation. Now, what is the meaning of sedation vacation? When you say sedation vacation, it means stop the sedation. Simple. Now, how does this prevent ventilator associated pneumonia? It prevents ventilator associated pneumonia. How does it prevent it? Can anyone tell me how you will prevent ventilator associated pneumonia by a sedation vacation? Anyone can tell me how it will prevent? Priya?
It will maintain the tone of respiratory muscles.
Sorry, Kanchan?
So it will maintain the tone of respiratory muscles, otherwise they will get paralyzed.
No. So how does it prevent? So I'll tell you how it prevents. So what happens is every time you give a patient a sedation vacation, it is found that the duration of mechanical ventilation will come down. The duration of mechanical ventilation will come down. Since the duration of mechanical ventilation comes down, ventilator associated pneumonia is reduced. Are we clear on this? It is related to the duration of mechanical ventilation. So every time you have a patient on a ventilator, it is very important to do a sedation vacation. It's very important to have a sedation vacation. Now, it is very simple to say do a sedation vacation, but that sedation vacation needs a complete a teamwork from the nurse, the doctor, the respiratory therapist. This is a teamwork. Sedation vacation does not just mean somebody coming and switching off the medicines that are sedating the patient. It means a complete teamwork from the nurse, respiratory therapist, and the doctor. Now, why is it so? Because you must understand that a patient is under sedation. Patient is under deep sedation like fentanyl, midazolam, and things like that. At that time, suddenly when you stop it and he wakes up, he will suddenly find the tube in his mouth. He will get agitated and he'll try to pull it off. So it is known that sedation vacations are known to increase the chance of accidental extubations. Accidental extubations. Now, accidental extubations are a bigger problem. They are a bigger problem than actually sedation vacation, because accidental extubations will increase the rate of ventilator associated pneumonia because you will reintubate them in an emergency. You understand? So every accidental extubation that occurs. Give me a minute, I'll just call you. Hello? Yeah. Yeah. Hi, Tommy. At the moment, yes. At the moment, I'll call you. If reports are na, reports are I'll call you. I will call you. Don't worry. Okay? Chal, yeah. Bye. So where are we? We are at.
The chances of reintubation after accidental extubation.
Okay. The chances of reintubation, if you reintubate your patients, the patient will have higher chances of ventilator associated pneumonia. That is why we have to prevent the accidental extubation. That is why to prevent the accidental extubation, our sedation stopping has to be very, very clear when to stop it. For example, that is the reason that you don't deeply sedate your patients. If you deeply sedate your patients, when they get up, they will be more delirious. They will be more delirious, and that is the reason that sedation has to be done as per a protocol. Sedation should be done such that the patient is lightly sedated, just tolerating the endotracheal tube. You don't give too much of sedation. If you give too much of sedation, make them very deep such that even if you are pinching, for example, the nurse is managing the sedation there. If the nurse is pinching and the patient is not waking up, that is very, very deep sedation. That means you have to reduce the sedation. The sedation has to be much lower than that. Reduce the sedation, reduce the fentanyl, reduce the midazolam, because if you keep very high sedation, the chances of the patient becoming delirium is very, very higher. Clear? That is why sedation has to be done as per a protocol. It is called as the RASS scale, the Rickman Agitation Sedation Score. So in that you have to keep the patient between 0 and -1. So on the back of your flow charts, you will see the RASS score. It has to be between 0 and -1. It is very important to keep the RASS between 0 and -1, which basically means if I come and call the patient will not wake up. If I lightly move the patient will wake up. That is the level of sedation you require. Okay, so the first thing of sedation vacation is you have to ensure that the patient is not very deeply sedated. Second thing is when you go to the patient, you stop the sedation, ensure that you are besides the patient when the patient wakens up. Okay, and third thing is nowadays it is said do a sedation vacation and couple it with a spontaneous breathing trial, also called as SBT. That means SAT plus SBT. That means spontaneous awakening trial plus spontaneous breathing trial should be done together to prevent ventilator associated pneumonia, because by doing this there will be a reduced length of mechanical ventilation and thus ventilator associated pneumonia. Clear on this till now? So the second part of the story, now we finished. One was semi-recumbent position. This is the ventilator bundle. Okay. And the second we talked about was sedation vacations. Now the third thing we are talking about is about peptic ulcer prophylaxis. Now you must understand this is a part of the ventilator bundle. This is not a part of reduction of ventilator associated pneumonia. It is just a part of the ventilator bundle. Every patient who's on the ventilator requires to have a peptic ulcer prophylaxis, because there are two reasons why a patient develops more bleeding. A is respiratory failure and B is coagulopathy. Only two reasons are there which causes increased mucosal ulceration, of which one is respiratory failure and the other is coagulopathy. Whenever there is respiratory failure, whenever there is coagulopathy, there is going to be a high incidence of bleeding, and it is important for us to prevent that bleeding. And that is the reason on a ventilator, why is the patient on the ventilator? Because he had respiratory failure, isn't it? So since he had respiratory failure, that is why we have to give them peptic ulcer prophylaxis. Please understand, this is not a part of prevention of ventilator associated pneumonia. It is just a part of the ventilator bundle. Okay, the fourth part of the ventilator bundle is DVT prophylaxis. Whoever is on the ventilator is not moving. You and me are moving. We are not sitting in one place. We are moving. Since we are moving, our blood is moving. There is no stasis of blood. But when a person is lying down on the bed, is on a ventilator, is immobile, and he is also inflamed, having different kind of infections and things like that, there is a high chance of developing a clot. And that is why DVT prophylaxis is a part of ventilator bundle. Okay, so now to summarize, what is the ventilator bundle? The first thing is semi-recumbent position. The second thing is sedation vacation. The third thing is peptic ulcer prophylaxis. And the fourth thing is DVT prophylaxis. Out of these, there are only two strategies that will actually help you to prevent ventilator associated pneumonia. The first strategy was semi-recumbent position, and the second strategy was sedation awakening trial or sedation spontaneous breathing trial, SAT plus SBT. That is the only two things that will prevent ventilator associated pneumonia. So what are the other things that prevent ventilator associated pneumonia? So in the prevention of ventilator associated pneumonia, what can the nurse or the doctor do to prevent pneumonia? To prevent pneumonia, the number one thing is do not intubate. As far as possible, try to use, hello? He has to come to, उसका तो swap करना पड़ेगा ना, घर भेज के बुला दो ना वापस उसको, आपके पीछे करके घर भेजने को, घर भेज दो उसको और फिर वापस बुला लो. अच्छा फीवर है, सस्पेक्ट आईसीयू में रख दो, फिर भाई जल्दी से बात कर लो, सस्पेक्ट में रख दो. अपने ऊपर वार्ड में सस्पेक्ट नहीं है क्या? तो फिर हमारे पास वो एक ही है सस्पेक्ट, फिर खत्म हो जाएगा हमारा. लेकिन सर्जरी है तो बेटर टू टेक, ले लो. नहीं दो है, ले लो. ओके या हाँ, hello. So when we talk about ventilator associated pneumonia, the two factors that we talked about is semi-recumbent position. The second thing we talked about sedation vacation. The third very important part that we are talking about in prevention of ventilator pneumonia is to prevent the ventilator in the first place. That is very important. That's the first thing. If you can do non-invasive strategies, prevent the tube going into the mouth, the chances of ventilator pneumonia is low. Of course, after putting the ventilator, if you ask me what are the prevention strategies, semi-recumbent positioning. Second thing is sedation vacation. Third thing is something very, very important which the nurses are supposed to do. What is that? Priya, can you tell me?
Subglottic suction.
Very good, very good. Anything more you can tell me?
Stereo suction with sterile gloves.
No. So now the third part of prevention of ventilator pneumonia is something that she mentioned. She mentioned something called as subglottic secretion drainage. So it has been proven that continuous subglottic secretion drainage will prevent ventilator associated pneumonia. Now the problem is we don't have a machine to do continuous unless you use the VapCare. In our ICU we have something called as VapCare. You have seen it. This VapCare. In that VapCare, it has got a lumen in which you can attach it to the subglottic secretion lumen of the endotracheal tube. Now what that does is it continuously does subglottic suction. That's why when you put that, you find that dabba filling up. That dabba filling up with, that suction bottle fills up with somewhere around 50 to 80 ml. You must understand that we all are secreting 180 ml per hour of secretions. 180 ml per hour of secretions. You understand? Much of the secretions are going to the GI tract and some is going into the airways. That is the reason that we need to do something called as subglottic suctioning. Now, where does the subglottic suction catheter go? It is below the vocal cords. Okay, so if your vocal cords are like this, your cough is here, the cough of the endotracheal tube is here, the subglottic suction is here. It's right over here, subglottic suction. The subglottic suction will remove the secretions above the cuff and below the cord. Subglottis. Subglottis means below the cord. So if there is secretions below the cord and above the cuff, it is from there that these secretions are taken up by a subglottic secretion drainage. What has been proven? Continuous subglottic secretion drainage has reduced the incidence of ventilator associated pneumonia. And that is the reason that we are paying so much money to buy a tube that has got subglottic suction drainage. A normal tube and subglottic suction drainage tube, there is a big difference in the cost. There's a big difference, and that is the reason we are investing so much of money to buy a subglottic suction drainage. Similarly, when you're doing a tracheostomy also, you have to put a tracheostomy with a subglottic suction drainage port. You should have a subglottic suction drainage port, which usually is yellow in color, Okay. Clear on subglottic suction drainage? Huh? Okay. Now, can Shraddha tell me whether she knows of any other technique to prevent ventilator associated pneumonia? Is there any other technique to prevent ventilator associated pneumonia? Shraddha.
Sir, oral care.
Very good, very good. So what she says is the most important thing actually in preventing ventilator associated pneumonia, and the most important thing is oral care. Now, what has been proven is that when you do good oral care, the incidence of ventilator associated pneumonia goes down majorly. Now, what is the meaning of good oral care? When you say oral care, it means using chlorhexidine mouth washes. This is different from hand wash. Chlorhexidine mouth washes don't have alcohol. Chlorhexidine mouth washes don't have alcohol, whereas your hand washes have got alcohol. 70% alcohol is there in your hand washes. The percentage of chlorhexidine when you are using mouth rinse is 0.2%, whereas the percentage of chlorhexidine when you're doing hand wash is 0.5%. Okay, so you have to use chlorhexidine mouth rinses in order on a regular basis to prevent ventilator associated pneumonia, because as what Shraddha rightly said is, it is from the oral cavity that most of the secretions are going down into the lungs. And that is why oral cavity, if it is clean, the lungs will be clean. And that is the reason that oral hygiene is very, very important. How frequently should we do it? How is it done? Ideally, it has to be done with a toothbrush. Even if the patient is on the ventilator, it is important to use a toothbrush and a suction device. So if you see the device that they are using in the ICU, it is a toothbrush along with a suction on it. It has got a hole inside. It is a toothbrush along with a suction. So that is what is used. A combined toothbrush and a suction device is used in order to remove, to prevent ventilator associated pneumonia. Now, why is that so? Because you must understand, when the person is on the ventilator, his mouth is dry. He's no longer, moving his mouth so that there is more secretions. He's no longer hungry. So his mouth becomes dry. Moreover, you're putting a lot of air into him. So it is becoming drier and drier. So what happens when the mouth becomes drier and drier? There is a increased and also you're given antibiotics. Antibiotics have changed the oral flora as well as the gastrointestinal flora. There is a formation of dental plaques on the tooth. It is these dental plaques that get infected and then go to the the vocal cords and then gets aspirated inside the lungs. And that is the reason that brushing is very, very important. It's not just when oral hygiene we talk, we also call brushing. We also tell that we need to brush the teeth with soft bristles because oral hygiene, because it will prevent ventilator associated pneumonia. You must understand that when you are in a condition where you are intubating your patient in the ICU, it is very different from what you do in the OT. In the operation theater, everything is very, very controlled. Everything is there. Patient is nice. Patient is fasting, and nicely you are intubating your patients with good relaxation. That is not how you are intubating patients in the ICU. In the ICU, your patients are hemodynamically unstable. They are peri-arrest. They have barely any oxygen. So what happens when a doctor or nurse is engaged in intubation? They are in stress. So when they are in stress, there is a very high chance that you have injured the oral cavity, you have injured the oropharynx. So that is a nidus for an infection, and all your bacteria will go from there into the blood and cause infection. And that is the reason that it's very important to do good oral hygiene for every patient who's on the mechanical on a mechanical ventilator. And what is the frequency of oral hygiene? So various studies have said various things, but on an average, at least twice during your shift. See, we are always thinking oral hygiene means I will brush once a day and go to sleep, but that is not the way you should do here. Here, you have to at least do it at least twice in a shift. Once during the start of your shift, once during the end of the shift. So what we have told is at least do it 4 times in a day. What we have said is do oral hygiene at least 4 times in a day with 0.2% chlorhexidine mouth rinses and pediatric toothbrushes or brush with suction cannula. Don't use forceps and gauze. Forceps and gauze is done in municipality hospitals. We don't do it here because of even there they don't do it actually because that will cause more and more injury to the oral cavity, more amount of bacteria, more amount of VAP. Clear? So this is one way you can prevent VAP. Then can you tell me any other way to prevent VAP? Is Vishranti?
So bed propped up 40 to 30 degrees.
Sorry.
Bed propped up 30 to 40 degrees.
That's all done. We finished propped up position. We finished sedation vacation. We finished oral hygiene. We finished subglottic secretion.
Sir, one is remaining. Prevention of reintubation and extubation.
I told that prevention of reintubation and extubation that is already done in sedation vacation.
Sir.
Yeah.
Sir, cuff pressure.
Yes. So who said that? Who said cuff pressure?
Sir, Needu.
Okay, very good. So cuff pressure is something very important in prevention of ventilator associated pneumonia. Now, why do we put that cuff inside? We put that cuff so that the ventilator does not come out. The tube does not come out. That is why the cuff is there. वो हम लोग बांध रहे हैं वो बात अलग है. You are tying, that is a second reinforcement, but the first reinforcement is always the cuff. Okay. Now, when you inflate the cuff, you have to inflate it only to 20 to 25 pressure. You can't inflate it more than that. If you inflate it to more than that, what will occur? There will be tracheal necrosis. Because the capillary circulation will stop. And stoppage of the capillary circulation will cause necrosis of the trachea. And that is the reason that in your daily rounds, the cuff pressure has to be seen. Every doctor, every nurse has to look at cuff pressure, because if the cuff pressure is more than 25, there can be tracheal necrosis. Worse, if the cuff pressure is lower. If the cuff pressure is lower, what is going to happen? All the secretions are going to go into the respiratory tract, into the lung, and will cause ventilator associated pneumonia. And that is the reason that monitoring of cuff pressure becomes very important. Okay, so monitoring of cuff pressure becomes very important. Now, these are the main evidence-based recommendations that we talked about. Let me just repeat that once more. Semi-recumbent positioning, daily sedation vacations and breathing trials, spotted breathing trials, oral hygiene with chlorhexidine 0.2% chlorhexidine mouthwashes, continuous subglottic suction drainage, prevention of use of ventilation in accidental extubation and reintubation. Okay, these are the real preventive strategies. Apart from this strategy, there are a few things that nurses and doctors should follow when you are having patients on the ventilator to prevent ventilator pneumonia. Number one is, one of the roots of ventilator associated pneumonia is inhalation. That means your respiratory therapy equipment, if that gets contaminated, you will cause cross contamination from one device to the other, into the lungs. That is the reason that when you are going to use nebulizers, when you're going to use suction catheters, it has to be very sterile. It has to be very sterile, because that will form a portal of entry. And that is the reason that we say that if you have put the patient on a ventilator and you are using a nebulizer, let the nebulizer be there. Don't take it out of the circuit. Avoid accidental removal, or don't remove it only from the circuit. You understand? Let the nebulizer be right there. Don't put it out of the circuit. But it's important that when you're putting up those medicines and all, to be absolutely sterile. This is one part. The second part is, obviously it goes on to say that very good hand hygiene will prevent ventilator associated pneumonia, because cross contamination will not be there. Okay, so you have very good hand hygiene that comes in place to prevent ventilator associated pneumonia, because one of the routes is through cross contaminated hands. The third thing is, do not routinely change endotracheal tubes or circuits unless they are soiled or contaminated. So if the circuit is okay for 10 days, also keep it for 10 days, no problem. But do not routinely change it. That every third day or every fourth day I'm going to change. Don't do that. It is not something that we want to do in these cases, because it can cause problems. So no routine changes of endotracheal tube. Fourth thing is, it has not been proven that open suction is better than closed suction or closed suction is better than open suction. You can use any form of suctioning, but whatever suctioning you have to use, you have to do it in a condition in which you do not contaminate the internal surfaces of the endotracheal tube. That means to say, if I'm going to do closed suctioning, I wash my hands very, very well and do closed suctioning. If I'm doing open suctioning, I wear sterile gloves and do open suctioning. I don't do it with my bare hands. If I'm doing open suctioning, it will be with sterile gloves. So these are the various reasons, ways how you can prevent ventilator associated pneumonia. Clear on this? Am I clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so